so tied to the Seven Nations that created the concept of Creole, coming from that word, a mixture. First Native American tribe to arrive in Louisiana 4,000 years ago, 2,000 years before Christ. The foods that we come to know from the Native Americans, the wild persimmons. Is this a French empire here? Well, yes, all with different foods, different ideas, different philosophies. But the Ursuline nuns arrive in Louisiana 1727, and they write about what's going on in New Orleans. We live on wild beef, deer, swans, goose, wild turkeys, rabbits, chicken. They bring us breads. They certainly bring us the sausages like the boudin noir. They bring us the mustards. They bring us the braised meat. The Cajuns, of course, they're great sausage makers. They're great hunters. They live in the swamps. The crawfish, certainly. The use of some of the swamp floor pantry items, the crabs. France is losing New Orleans. They can't control it. So all of the stuff that you see in the French Quarter are actually Spanish in design. You're looking at olive oils, you're looking at olives. They planted the first olive orchards here. When we look at the onion, celery, bell pepper, the Trinity is coming from Spain. All the hot peppers from Mexico and South America. All of our peppers are sweet peppers. Bell peppers, bell meaning sweet. First slave ship to hit Louisiana, 1720. They made great use of the shoe peak as what they call sheep's head, and then of course the catfish out of the river. The Germans are next. They brought with them the art of charcuterie. They brought the dairy industry to Louisiana as well. The foods of Germany, of course, you can see the hoof-on ham, the fruits, the apples. England comes in. They bring in the picnics and the social events. First pressure cookers to do some of these slower braised dishes, and bread, puddings, eggs, and dairy. And then Italy, which is the last of the nations, the fig cakes and all the decorative pastries are all enhanced here because of the Italians and their feast of St. Joseph. They would go into the swamps and pick the wild greens. They would pick anything that grew along the riverbank and put it into the cast iron pots. But one of the great dishes that we attribute to the Africans today is our gumbo zab. The Africans say you must always have 7 different greens. They're very superstitious. You can't ever put an even number in the pot, Leah Chase says. This is a smoked meat, fully seasoned, and of course, the Africans were the cooks making this in the German smokehouses. At the same time, they were using underutilized or less used pieces of meat, trimmings off of briskets or trimmings off of any kind of roast or that might go into the smokehouse as a seasoning meat. Hams, of course, as they were trimmed off of the shanks, they would use that for flavor as well. And then typical smoked sausages. Anything that would add flavor to the pot, anything that was left over from the main dish would be used in their cooking for flavor. So the gumbo zab, as we call it, gumbo of grass, or gumbo vad, green gumbo, is an African gift to Louisiana. They always started with that cast iron pot, and of course, their lard. They're looking for flavor any way they could get it, and the bushries from the crackling always created the big 5-gallon buckets of lard. All of the nations we just talked about is actually on the plate right now. Onions, celery, we're just gonna throw it all in. That's typical of African cooking. Everything goes in at one time into that pot, and that's good right there. So we have onions, celery, all the different bell peppers that they grew, hot as well, the cayennes, the tabascos, the habaneros, they would all go into the pot. Spain was growing them all over South Louisiana at that time. That's nothing new to the cuisine here. When we talk about hot and spicy, a lot of that doesn't come from blackening, it comes from Spanish spice. We're gonna throw in all the meats just like this, which is what was done. Again, we have the ham, as you can see, going in first. We have the stew meat, just trimmings off of a roast or a neck bone or whatever. And then of course the smoked sausages, the andouille. But look, the pot's already filled. They weren't particular about what green. There's cabbage here. You'll notice there's spinach, collards, there's a mustard, there's really soft lettuces here, and that could represent purslane or some of the wild herbs that grew on the river. But you had your greens, You had your seasonings, you had a chunk of meat, and of course the rice growers, right? So the rice is going to go into this pot as well. So we would let this cook down here for, maybe about an hour or so. Just let this cook with the meat and adding water to it as we go. So the gumbo zab or the gumbo vad is at least a 300-year-old dish in New Orleans. It's attributed to the African cooks as it should be, but remember, every culture, especially the Germans, cooked this dish. Everybody who made gardens or cooked greens and smoked on their own meats, which everybody did in Louisiana, would certainly be cooking this dish at any given time in the winter season when we bush reed.